Piker, I just did one of these talks at Cambridge University, at Cambridge Union yesterday, and after seeing Oxford, immediately after that, it feels like a quaint fishing village in comparison to what's going on here. Having said that, however, there was a lot of contest at Cambridge Union, and judging by how the Q&A session goes in the aftermath of this speech, I'm going to make up my assumption on whether the age-old conversation, whichever way that unfolds. Is Cambridge better than Oxford? Is Oxford better than Cambridge? We'll find out. They were very ruthless over there. I'm just letting you know. They even said that apparently I was more controversial or more contentious than Ben Shapiro. So, it's interesting times. I gave a speech yesterday, and I didn't want to do the same exact speech here, so while I wrote that speech on the car ride from London to Cambridge, I wrote another one on the car ride from London to Oxford today. Both are going to be haphazard and put together, but it's a serious one, so bear with me. This is not something I normally do. I have the gift of gab. I talk all the time, 8 to 10 hours every single day. Specifically on controversial, polarizing political issues, but today I'm going to try to streamline my thoughts a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you in this storied, deliberative hall, following the footsteps of much more credible and much more intelligent thinkers as nothing but a simple man. A simple man who understands right from wrong. And sometimes that's all that matters. In the words of my friend, the late, great Michael Jamal Brooks, there's nothing complicated about apartheid. There's nothing complicated. The morality is clear. If the roles were reversed and a captive Jewish population of 5 million were being systematically starved, sieged, and dominated, as its ancestral lands were being destroyed, there would be no confusion or complexity. It's super simple, he used to say. There's one group, Israel, that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States, the most powerful country in the world. It acts on a population of people with total impunity. It is never held accountable for anything, so there's no symmetry in this relationship, period. That's why I don't think there's any need for obfuscation. No arguments of complexity, no reasoning for preemptive genocide. Israel is an apartheid state, and its inception was a violent one, with the displacement, the forced displacement of 700,000, which gave birth to a settler colonial entity that continues to dominate the lives of more than 5 million Palestinians. Its demographic concerns are never seen in the same lens that we view nationalist and fascist projects of the past. It also happens to be one of the most impressive nationalist projects the world has ever seen. From the revitalization of Hebrew as a language to finding a nation state for a revolutionary people who had been historically oppressed. Victim to countless pogroms, the Holocaust, Israel could have been a story of success and overcoming great odds. Except its inception was built around a vicious lie that this was a land without people for a people without land. And this lie was very quickly also countered by the likes of Albert Einstein, who was supposed to be the first president of Israel. He turned down that opportunity. Having appeared as a witness before the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry, established in 1945 to consider the issue of Jewish immigration to Palestine, Albert Einstein famously wrote, "I have served as a witness before the Anglo-American Inquiry Commission on Palestine for the sole purpose to act in favor of our just cause. I am in favor of Palestine being developed as a Jewish homeland, but not as a separate state. It seems to me a matter for simple common sense that we cannot ask to be given the political rule over Palestine where 2/3 of the population are not Jewish. What we can and should ask is a secured binational status in Palestine with free immigration. If we ask more, we are damaging our own cause. And it's difficult for me to group that our Zionists are taking such, and it's difficult for me to grasp that our Zionists are taking such an intransigent position which can only impair our cause. And his fears were very quickly realized. That was in 1946 when he wrote that. Only 2 years after, in April 1948, 2 Zionist militias, Irgun and Stern Gang, entered the Palestinian village of Deir Yassin and slaughtered hundreds of Palestinian men, women, and children. Those who were not slaughtered or tortured initially were paraded in the back of trucks in the streets of Jerusalem, only to be executed later. This was a warning for all of the other Arab villages of what's to come. This was a calculated atrocity to carry out the forced expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians from their homes, never allowing them to return. This is what is known to Palestinians as the Nakba, catastrophe. Einstein wrote a letter at this time. In his letter, he said, "When a real and final catastrophe should befall us in Palestine, the first responsible for it will be the British." Sorry. He was right. "And the second responsible for it will be the terrorist organizations built up from our own ranks. I am not willing to see anybody associated with those misled and criminal people." Now, the people that carried out these acts of horror would later become prime ministers of Israel. The Nakba was, in the words of historian Ilan Pape, a master plan for the mass expulsion of the Palestinian population, also known as Plan D or Plan Dalet. Hundreds of thousands were expelled before Israel's so-called War of Independence had even started. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, to use Pape's words, orchestrated an ethnic cleansing of Palestine. These were not merely nationalists or settlers run amok. This was clearly defined state policy. Einstein considered the early Zionist militias to be violent, and Menachem Begin's Herut, a political party closely akin to its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. Einstein understood the dangers that nationalism of this sort presented. After all, he'd fled Nazi Germany. He had seen it firsthand. Nowadays, this sort of analysis is met with tremendous resistance. Given our comforts living in the heart of empire, we focus more on the feelings of those in the West rather than the violence that our tax dollars contribute to. Israel could not carry out its occupation without unlimited Western weapons and Western support. This is where propaganda to the West plays a very important role. Facing centuries of violence, Israel uses the very real fears of anti-Semitism to reinforce the necessity of a Jewish ethno-state, often claiming that no Jew would ever be safe if it wasn't for Israel. This is something that you hear all the time. You even heard it from my demented geriatric president, Joe Biden. He said that as well, this ridiculous statement. The United States is home to almost the same number of Jewish people as Israel. So when Joe Biden says something like that as the President of the United States of America, although he thinks this is servicing the defense of Israel and America's interest in Israel, I see that as a veiled threat, an abdication of his responsibility to American Jewish citizens, our brothers and sisters. Israel is no more a champion of Judaism than ISIS is a champion of Islam. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Saudi Arabia's decades-long blockade against Yemen is worthy of criticism. If someone were to consider that Islamophobic to say, everyone would laugh at you. America's unjustifiable and illegal occupation and invasion of Iraq was not done at the behest of Christianity. If someone were to turn around and say, George W. Bush said, God told me to invade Afghanistan and Iraq, that's actually a Christian act, most people would laugh at you. criticizing that would not be considered being Christian phobic. This is not anti-Christian bigotry. Claiming that a religious and ethno-supremacist apartheid state that is currently engaging in a genocide has anything to do with Judaism is unimaginably anti-Semitic, however. This is precisely why this rhetorical tactic is applied by those who cynically wish to defend Israel and those who seek to use criticisms of Israel as a cynical ploy to traffic in anti-Semitic rhetoric. Anti-Semitism is a canary in the coal mine of fascism. It's one of the oldest bigotries that has caused those of the Jewish faith a tremendous amount of pain. From pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for instability and economic volatility people in power cause. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat, especially as economic instability makes those in power seek out old targets. They're not very creative, usually. They just always rehash the same propaganda over and over again. This is precisely the reason why I am terrified of the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. The conflation is dangerous. Valid criticisms against the state, especially as all of the violence is unfolding, and everyone can see it, valid criticisms against the state committing these atrocities and tying it back to Judaism is a cynical ploy to stop all matter of conversation is truly terrifying. And I think it directly causes anti-Semitism to fester. Perhaps this is why I'm often asked the question, Hasan, why does America have so much loyalty to Israel? And I think there are a lot of people who ask this question because they genuinely want to understand. They don't get it. But then there are some who ask it because they want me to say anti-Semitic things. They want me to say, oh, because Jews control the media or the government. This is not true. This is not the reality at all. But the very fact that people have that resilient, nascent, unexamined anti-Semitic tendency is truly terrifying, especially in this moment, because it's a real question that can lead people down the rabbit hole of anti-Semitic conspiracies about Jewish control over the American state and media. Simply put, Israel is an asset. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in a resource-rich region. It is one of the most valuable allies that the United States has for its interests in the region. At different points in time, Israel has served different purposes for the United States, its primary benefactor. It's been a Cold War ally. It's been a punisher of misbehaving Middle Eastern oil states. It's also been a partner in Western espionage. This is why I often jokingly state that even if every single American Jew was a card-carrying anti-Zionist overnight, America would still continue to have the exact same Israel policies. And that is absolutely the truth, especially when you look at the latest J Street poll that was conducted on American Jews. 70% of them wanted to halt arms transfers to force Israel to commit to a ceasefire in Gaza. Either Joe Biden didn't hear that, he didn't see that, or he didn't care. Or maybe this has nothing to do with the wishes of American Jews. After all, there was another study that was conducted leading up to the election. And for American Jews, it was the 9th out of the top 10 priorities. Israel was the 9th priority. Because this trope of dual loyalty is oftentimes applied by those who are defending Israel who think that they're actually being pro-Jewish, when in fact they're not doing that. It's the exact opposite. But contrary to popular sentiment, anti-Semitism is also not the guiding principle of Palestinian resistance. They are singularly focused on ending a 76-year-old colonial occupation. The standard of violence is always set by the colonial entity. The maintenance of apartheid is an unimaginably bloody affair. Checkpoints, separate roads, indefinite military detention of Palestinian children, refusal of permits to build water wells, wholesale destruction of villages, letting rabid right-wing settlers operate like the Klan in the occupied West Bank, and offering military protection to their campaigns of ethnic displacement are all parts of the often invisible violence that plays a role in the daily existence of Palestinians. But because it's systematized, we do not have that same attitude towards this kind of violence because it's state policy. It's not a non-state actor conducting these affairs. So we read it very differently. Almost a century of domination, land grabs, and ritualistic humiliation of an indigenous population is always going to be violent. And the retaliation to that violence will always increase as the captive population becomes more desperate. The notion that Palestinians are not simply seeking an end to the occupation, but instead operating with an ancient desire of anti-Semitism might be a comfortable narrative that feeds into people's cognitive dissonance. But there are plenty of former Israeli leaders who disagree with you. And I want to give you some quotes. From Ami Ayalon. He's the former head of the Israeli intelligence agency Shin Bet. Not exactly a guy who's card-carrying, woke, college campus, pro-Palestinian encampment guy. He famously declared to ABC that if he were Palestinian, he would fight against Israel and would do everything to achieve liberty. Now, his words are not uncommon amongst many of Israel's former leaders. Ehud Barak said something similar as well. But the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, also understood the need for Palestinian resistance despite his dedication to destroying it. He stated, "If I was an Arab leader, I would never make terms with Israel. That is natural. We have taken their country. Sure, God promised it to us, but what does that matter to them? Our God is not theirs. We come from Israel. It's true. But that was 2,000 years ago. And what is that to them? There has been anti-Semitism, the Nazis, Hitler, Auschwitz. But was that their fault? They only see one thing. We have come and stolen their country. Why should they accept that?" We do not judge the violence that unfolds in retaliation to the systematic enforcement of brutal practices, whether it be slavery or apartheid in any other context. The Nat Turner Rebellion, the Haitian Revolution, the violence that unfolded in the liberation of Algeria, the militancy of the ANC. These are all very violent endeavors, but they can never match up to the structural and standardized violence which exists in the maintenance of chattel slavery, in the maintenance of colonialism, and in the maintenance of apartheid. So if you were to tell me that the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was inappropriate or too violent, I would laugh at you. I would have you committed. That would be an insane thing to say. So, in the face of countless atrocities that have unfolded over this past year, child mutilation, drone copters sniping children, drone copters playing the sounds of wailing children seeking out help in an effort to lure out unsuspecting Palestinian civilians with the express purpose of murdering them, bombing virtually every aspect of civil life in Gaza, the world's largest open-air prison. I think it's time that we have to have an honest conversation about Israel, because there are a lot of intelligent people in here, and if we don't have an honest conversation, we're never going to be able to solve this problem. This is especially a volatile time as well, because right now we are facing a crisis of fascism in the Western world. These nascent movements are growing all across Western liberal democracies. You have the Reform Party here in the UK, you have Donald Trump in the United States of America, who is significantly more violent in both his rhetoric and much more vindictive than the first time around. You have the AfD in Germany, you have Meloni in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and so on and so forth. So in this time, we need to make sure that we can restore confidence in legacy publishers and in mainstream media, and yet they have time and time again dropped the ball. A lot of people, especially in the democratization of media, especially with inventions like TikTok and social media, can personally see exactly what's going on in places like Gaza in a way that they never were able to do so before. And when you see something that's going on And the immediate contextualization offered by oftentimes an IDF guy on CNN does not match with that reality of child mutilation, baby murder, things of that nature. You start losing faith in these mainstream institutions. And I'm truly terrified of what is to come if we don't fix this problem. And it's on all of us to play a role in speaking the truth. So I urge all of you to not give in to pessimism, to not give in to your nihilistic tendencies and think, well, we've done our encampments and the schools did not respond positively. They're still giving money to Elbit systems or whatever. I urge you not to succumb to nihilism, because there are many other crises out there, especially including the crisis that the Palestinian people face every day. And the truth matters and your voice matters, so continue to keep up the pressure, because there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen. Free Palestine.
That was the speech I delivered 5 months ago. That was the speech I delivered 5 months ago. They uploaded it 13 hours ago on Oxford Union. It was half off the cuff, half half off the cuff, half wrote in the car ride over there. Not my best. I mean, this is not something that I do. There was a Q&A afterwards. We watched the Q&A because they released the Q&A beforehand. I don't know. I just like, you can pinpoint who watched the video and listened and who didn't. I think like I don't know. I'm far from the best speaker. I'm not very good at like reading a speech off of a piece of paper in front of me. Will you allow me some mostly aesthetic critique? Sure. But it's all right. When I call Joe Biden demented in the halls of Oxford University, I think it's appropriate to do that because it's the truth. I'd laugh at you for never pronouncing Menachem Begin's name correctly. Am I saying it wrong when I say Menachem Begin? Isn't that how you say it? I mean, fuck them. You're right, but was Oxford? You're a little too tight, and I guess official. I can't think of the right word. I agree. Menachem. Manichum. Read the G. Begin? Is it Begin? Oh, I didn't know that.
And
all right, well, that was my Oxford speech. It's a good time to release it, even though they are under pressure. Oxford Union is under pressure right now. They're being investigated they're currently being investigated by like the counterterrorism unit, I think, for one of their speeches that they released. Meanwhile,